That's it. Able to hear me? Able to hear me, Thiru?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Right, so let's get started. In our last class, we are trying to understand the basic part of Azure Identity Service.
Yeah.
So where we define what an identity service is, and we try to understand the protocols used, and then we did also see what is the difference when we compare it with the on-premises identity service, which is Active Directory domain services. Right. So that's what our discussion was. So today we are will talk about another very important concept, which is tenant. So that will be our first discussion, and then we'll see the users and groups. How do we create the users, and what are the options that we will have? And then we'll try to understand the additions or the licensing part of Azure Active Directory. Okay, so that's the agenda for today.
Okay.
Right. So let us try to understand this concept called as Azure tenant. So let us say there is an organization, right? And they decided to go with the Azure cloud. Right? So any organization that requires or that is willing to use Azure cloud. So like even if you use an email system, you go and sign up to use it, right? Similarly, you as an organization has to sign up to Azure cloud, right? So as an organization, if you want to use cloud services, Azure cloud services, you need to sign up. Okay? So maybe as an individual or as an organization.
Okay.
So let us say there is this organization, let us take some name to call it as, maybe let us say Taste of Cloud. So this organization want to use Azure cloud services. So then what do? Is they go and sign up, right? So they're going to go and sign up to Azure cloud. So like any signups that what we do in general, what are the things involved, right? So we generally use our email address, maybe a phone number, and some additional details related to you. So this company goes and signs up. So using some email address, maybe some phone number and other details. Okay. So let us take this example. So they used email address, let us say abc@eoc.com. So I assume that this is what the email address they used, and they used some phone number and other details to sign up to the Azure cloud. So whenever they sign up to Azure cloud, so what happens is they get an Azure account created. So they will have an Azure account created. Right. So now, along with this Azure account, now concentrate. So along with this Azure account, an identity service is also getting created automatically. Now, what is this identity service that gets created? That is your Azure Active Directory or Microsoft Entra ID. So, this is Microsoft Entra ID. So, whenever any organization signs up to Azure Cloud, along with the account that gets created, an identity service is also getting created for that organization automatically. And this identity service that gets automatically created when you sign up, we call it as tenant. So tenant is nothing but an identity service that gets automatically created whenever as an individual or as an organization you sign up to the Azure cloud. So even you might have noticed whenever you go and create a free trial account, the Active Directory environment is automatically created. You don't do anything, right? Did we create anything? No. It automatically gets created. Now that identity environment is called as tenant. Tenant and Azure Active Directory environment. Simple. So people will confuse when you not have to. So tenant is nothing but Azure Active Directory environment of an organization. Simple.
So here, like Entra ID is the tenant, identity, right?
Yeah, so as I said in my earlier class yesterday before, so this Azure Active Directory is renamed as Entra ID.
Okay.
Both are same. Okay. So Entra ID and Azure Active Directory are same. So going forward, we may not use Azure AD much. We may use the name Entra ID, but both are same. Okay. Right.
Okay.
So where is this tenant then? So if you look at this, right? So if I go to my Entra ID, so this is the tenant. This entire service, whatever you see the identity service, we call it as tenant. Okay. Now, so every tenant will have a tenant ID. So every tenant or every Entra environment will have a tenant ID. So this is a unique identifier, represents your organization on Azure environment. So every organization, whichever has got a cloud, Azure cloud environment, they will have a tenant, and that tenant will have a unique identifier which represents your organization. So if you look at this closely, so this is the Azure Active Directory or Entra ID environment of my subscription. So you see this is the tenant ID of my Azure AD or Entra ID environment. Okay. Now, apart from this, so whenever you sign up, there is also a directory name that is assigned. So the tenant gets automatically created, which will have a tenant ID, and it will also have a name called as a directory name. So by default, it picks some name, which is default name or something. If required, you can change it. Okay. So a tenant ID and directory name are related to the Azure Entra environment. Okay. Now,
Okay.
so it also creates a domain name. So these three are automatically created. You are not going to do anything. So they are created because you are signing up. Right? Now this domain name is also unique. Across Azure AD environment, no two organizations will have same domain name. Okay. So no two organizations will have same domain.
Okay.
So the domain name gets generated based on the email you use to sign up. So for example, you used an email address abc@xyz.com. So the domain name that gets generated is like this: abcxyz.onmicrosoft. So by using the email address, the domain name is automatically generated. So if you are using an email address, let us say abc@xyz.com, it is going to combine this abc and this xyz. That will be your prefix for your domain name .on Microsoft. So if you had already signed up to a free account, and if you had used some email address, the domain name that whatever you see in your Entra ID will be your email dot on Microsoft.com. So in this particular case, if you are using, let us say, abc@toc.com, the domain name would be abc.toc.onmicrosoft, right? So this is how the domain name is getting auto-generated. Again, remember, no two organizations or no organization will use the same domain name whatever you used. So this will be unique across Azure Entra ID environment. No two organizations will have same tenant ID or same domain name. Okay. Now, every tenant will also have a license. In the sense, your Entra ID environment will also have a licensing tag to it. By default, your tenant will be free trial tenant by default, where you get basic features. So your Entra ID environment will be with free account or free Entra ID environment, where you get basic features of Azure Active Directory. But in case if you need some advanced solutions, then you need to go ahead and upgrade your licenses. Okay, but otherwise by default it will be free trial or free licenses, not trial, free licenses, right? So free license. So that's why if you go and look at your Entra ID environment, you see a name here, you see a tenant ID here, you need a domain, you see a domain name here, and you also see license. What license you have? Microsoft Entra ID free license. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll try to understand what are the different license models we have and so on as we move on. But for now, understand that by default it is Entra ID free licenses. Okay. Now, so when you create your users, with the default domain, right? They will be like this, right? So user @ if you take this example, abc@toc.com, what will be your user name will be abc@toc.onmicrosoft.com. So whatever the users you create, the user principal name will be like this. UPN we call it as, right? User principal name will be like this. So any users that which you create will be like this. So then no organizations would like to go with this default domain name, because your organization may want to have your organization's domain name when you create users, right? They should not be with onmicrosoft.com. So can we do that? Yes, you can. Okay, so that we'll be discussing in one of our classes. But for
Okay.
now, understand that all the users, that whatever you create with the default domain name will be on microsoft.com as a domain name. So the UPN would be user at the rate your on microsoft.com. Okay, right.
Okay.
So how do we change this and all those things we'll be discussing in the upcoming classes. For now, our understanding should be this. Okay, right.
Okay.
Now, let us talk about the licenses.
So here UPN means like is it a principal name, something like that?
Yeah, that's what you on premises also you use the same, no? User principal
Okay.
name.
Okay.
Your user at the rate domain name, right? So
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
log
Okay.
into your servers or maybe to some applications, right?
Okay.
So same here, no difference. User principal name. Okay? So your Azure Active Directory or Entra ID come with three types of licenses. So one is Entra ID free. So that's the default one, right? And then you get premium P1, and you get premium P2. These are the license types. Yes. Right. The premium P2 licenses. And of course, you can also use 365 licenses as okay. So when you go with free licenses, you get basic features.
Okay.
And there is a limit of number of objects. You can create uh, 500,000 objects max, not more than that. When we say objects, users, groups, and so on. So you'll have basic features, and there is a limitation with the number of objects that which you can create. Okay, so advanced features are not available. So as an organization, if you're looking for some advanced solutions, then you either go with either P1 or P2 licenses. So when you go with premium P2 licenses or premium P1 licenses, you get all the features in the free license model. Along with that, you get some additional features. Okay, so let us try to understand this quickly. I'll just take you through some uh, content. Give me a minute.
Oh, okay.
So these are the additions that which we should be aware of. Just put this here. So now if you look at this particular table closely, so I was talking about free edition where I said you get around 500,000 objects and some basic features like single sign-on, B2B collaboration, and basic identity access features are available. But if you are looking for some advanced solutions, as I said, you should be either going with either P1 or P2 solutions. Now, what are the advantages you get when you go with P1, right? So you get a feature called as conditional access. You see this conditional access, right? Now, what is this conditional access is based on certain conditions, you either allow or deny access to the environment. For example, if the user is logging in into the Azure environment from location other than India, maybe you might not allow them to log in, okay? Or maybe you want to force them to go through multi-factor authentication, right? Or maybe you want to kind of do some additional checks. Or when user is trying from connecting from office, there is no need for multi-factor authentication or whatsoever. Right? So you can go and define certain conditions. Based on that, you either allow or deny access to the environment. So that feature is available both in P1 and P2, where you can go and configure it by using conditional access. So that is one important feature, right, which is available both in P1 and P2. And then you got another feature called as advanced group access. So in advanced group access, what you generally do is you go and use some rules to automatically add users to the group. Generally, what do we do? When somebody needs to be added to a specific group, we manually add them.
Yes.
But you can automate those things by using something called as dynamic groups.
Okay.
So in dynamic groups, what you say is you go and write some queries or conditions. Whenever a condition is met, that user is automatically added to the group. For example, all the users whose department is marked as HR. So in a user object, you have that attribute called as HR, right? Where you can specify the you have that attribute called as department, right? Every user object will have that attribute, right? And you can put some value there, right? So let us say if the department, the user object has got department value as HR, and what you want to do is you want to add all these objects to a group. So this group, whatever you create in this group, you write a condition which says that boss, go ahead and look all the user IDs whose department is HR, and those should be added to this group. And your system automatically does it for you. Any new user ID that gets created, it will be automatically added. Any user ID whose department gets changed, they will be automatically removed. So these are certain advanced solutions that which you can use, and that is available in advanced group access under dynamic user group. You can also add devices to the group. Maybe all the Windows 11 devices should be added to a group. And why do you want to add it? Maybe you want to control them together. You may want to set some policies, right? Like that. So those type of advanced group access solutions are available in P1 and P2, right? And then you can also go with what do you call it as hybrid identities, where you can go ahead and use password write back and other solutions. And then you can also use some features in the premium features, something called as SSPR, self-service password reset. So what is this self-service password reset? Is let us say if the user has forgot his password, right? So instead of calling the help desk, he can reset password on his own. Okay, so it is similar to uh, the situation where you forget your maybe your Gmail account password or maybe your social networking site password. What do you do generally in those cases is you go and hit forgot password option, right?
Yes,
So when you hit forgot password, then it will ask you maybe your alternate email address, which is already configured, maybe a phone number, and then it will either send an OTP or maybe a link to reset password on your own, right? So similarly, Azure provides you a solution called as SSPR, which stands for Self-Service Password Reset, using which your users can reset passwords on their own instead of calling the service desk. Okay. Now, these type of features are available both in Premium 1 and Premium 2 editions, right? Both in Premium 1 and Premium 2, you have these features. Now let us look at only Premium 2 features. So Premium 2 has got all the features of Premium 1 with some additional capabilities. And those capabilities includes mostly the risk management part. It's all about risk management. So when I say risk management here, it will identify risk sign-ins, failure logins. It will identify all the malicious traffic that which will come from unknown IP addresses or VPNs. It will help you to derive some actions when those type of situation comes. Now, these type of risk management solutions are available in identity protection and governance part of your premium. Now, assume that every day you are logging from India. All of a sudden, your session is coming from US. So your system will identify that this is an abnormal login and it will challenge you, right? What it does is maybe it will ask you to go with multi-factor authentication or maybe change password. There could be some action that needs to be, taken, or maybe multiple logins block the access and so on, right? Or multiple failures, right? And then you may want to block it. Or maybe one of the customer of Microsoft got into an issue from one of the IP addresses and they blocked it. And you are also getting traffic from the same IP address. You will be notified. So you can use the AI or data that whatever Microsoft gathers across their customers for the other customers as well. So that is the advantage when it comes to security and risk management. When you go with P2, you get those features under identity protection and governance. Okay. So as an organization, you need to decide whether you would like to stick to what do we call it as free, or you would like to go with either Premium 1 or Premium 2 solutions. Now there is a cost that goes on with this. Okay. Now understand that, very important, cost of Entra ID or AAD is billed separate. What I'm trying to explain here is, whenever you deploy resources, maybe let us say you deploy VMs or maybe you deploy some storage, the cost of that will be billed to something called as subscription, but Azure Active Directory is billed separately based on the licenses that which you use. And the cost is per user cost. So based on the license you use, there is a difference in the cost per user. So when you go and create users in free Entra ID environment, there is no cost as such. But when you upgrade this license to either Premium 1 or Premium 2, there will be a cost per user. Okay. Now let us quickly see some documentation around this. So they changed a few things here. So earlier it used to be Azure AD, now it is Android. Okay. So now you
Okay.
see, this is free. That's what we were talking. But when you upgrade this to P1, so there is a cost of $6 per user per month. And if you go with P2, it is $9 per user per month. And there is also this governance capabilities, I think, which is introduced recently. This was not there earlier, which is $7 per user per month. So now also understand that this is a yearly cost. I mean, you even if you use the license, one license, you will be paying per entire year. Whether you use it or not, the cost will be per year. The moment you go and say that I need 2 licenses, the cost will be per year. Okay. So then, how do I upgrade my environment from a free edition to either P1 or P2? So what are the things that which I should be doing? So let us try to understand that. So as an organization, you may want to go with either premium 1 or premium 2. Okay. So those type of situations, you can directly contact Microsoft and ask them for an upgrade. That is one method. The second method is you can go and purchase yourself the premium licenses from the portal. Okay, two methods are there. The first method is, as I said, you directly contact a Microsoft representative and ask them for an upgrade, and you tell these many user licenses are needed. This is again per user licenses. Okay. So if you have 100 users who need P1 licenses, you will be purchasing 100 P1 licenses. And the cost of each license would be P1 means around $6
$6. Yeah.
per month, right? So then, in case if you want to go and purchase from the site on your own, so what you can do is you can go to your Entra ID, and here you see this option called as licenses. Under the manage section, you see this licenses option, right? And if you go to that licenses option, you will be shown with this option called as all products, right? And you see this try/buy option. So when you hit this try/buy, in case if you want to purchase the licenses, you can go to this purchase service catalog and purchase the licenses from there. So it will basically ask you to log in, and then it will ask you what is that you would like to purchase and how many licenses you need. And all those questions will be asked, and then you will be submitting them, and then you will be purchasing from here. That is another method. So one, you can directly talk
Okay.
to Microsoft and purchase, or go to service catalog and purchase it from there. Okay. Now,
Okay.
as a learner, right? So we will be also learning these premium features as well, right? So we just don't learn this free one, we also learn the premium features. So then how do you learn these premium features, right? So you definitely need P2 licenses to kind of explore these things, right? So you will be provided with a free licenses of P2. Okay. So if you go to the same option of licenses under your manage of Entra ID, and you go to the same option of all products, and when you use the same option called as try/buy, now this time you are not purchasing the things, rather you would like to try it, right? So what Microsoft gives you is Microsoft gives you an option to use a free P2 environment. Okay. And this will work for 30 days. So whenever you activate these P2 licenses of Azure AD or Entra ID, the activation will work for P2 licenses activation will work for 30 days. And they are going to give you 100 licenses which will work for 30 days. So which means you can go and create 100 users and assign them P2 licenses, and all those users will get those P2 features. Okay. On the 31st day, you will be losing, or you will be reverted back to free trial. Right? So that's how your free trial thing will be used. So whenever we demonstrate any premium to licenses related features, so you should have this P2 license. So you activate it and then refresh it, then your license here will change it to P2. Okay. So I had already used these licenses. So that's why if I go back and go to all products, try/buy and try to activate it, it fails, right? It fails because it says that you had already activated the P2 licenses.
Okay.
So whenever you need not have to activate straight away, let us wait. Let us start some this thing, then you can go and activate it. Okay, right. So, but this is how we will be using all the premium features. Okay, right. So this is about our licenses and then tenant.
Yeah.
Got any questions on this? Please ask.
No. I will take a look and get back. As of now, I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Now, let us get into our next discussion, which is users. Now we'll talk about the users part. So as per our day before yesterday's discussion, the purpose of Azure AD is to create users, groups, and of course even to manage the devices and so on. Okay. Now the purpose of Azure Active Directory, I think we discussed this. One is users creation, groups, and then you can also do device management. I think I didn't explain this. I'll explain it now.
Yeah.
Right? You can also control the devices or do the device management. So then what is this device management? Let us try to understand a little bit. Okay. So now these days, most of the companies are allowing their employees to use their own devices, right? Which we call it as BYOD, right? What is that? Bring your own device, right? Companies are allowing employees to purchase a device and use it. Instead of companies going with the devices, purchasing, procuring the devices and giving it to the users, let user purchase it, right? And he use it, right? So maybe it will be, they will be deducting it from their salary, or maybe some program that which will go on, or maybe he has to return it when he leaves the organization or whatever. So that's how things will be. So users are using their own devices. Then how secure they are, right? So you need some solution that which will control these devices. So when it is when I say it is a device, it need not be only a laptop, right? It can be a physical device, a laptop or desktop, right? With a Windows or Linux OS, or maybe
Yeah.
it can be a mobile as well, right? So these days, even the applications are accessed from the mobile devices. Now, how safe these mobile devices as well? Maybe you are using your HR portal and you are allowed maybe from your mobile. Then is it safe? So that's where companies will go and try to enforce some policies on these devices. They want to make sure that they have strong password set to their mobile or laptop. There should be some antivirus running, or they might be connected to some VPN, or there should be a separate profile for the office applications on mobile. There could be multiple requirements. So then how do you validate these personal devices of your users? If it is an office device, then it will be joined to your directory services domain. You may push some group policies or some means you can go and control it, right? But these devices, which are users devices, which are sitting on internet, you want to control them. So that's where you can add these devices to your Azure Active Directory. You can register them to your Azure Active Directory. So all these registered devices, they can be controlled by using solutions called as MDM solution. What is MDM? Have you heard about it? You can use MDM solutions for management, controlling the devices.
Yeah.
So MDM basically stands for mobile device
Nice.
management. Okay. So Microsoft has got their own MDM solution. What is that? It is Intune. Microsoft Intune or Intunes. So Microsoft has got their own MDM solution. Using that, you can control the devices which are registered to your Azure Active Directory. So that's why we say Azure Active Directory not only helping you with the users or groups and so on, but it will also help you with device management as well. Okay. Right. Now let us get back to this users. So Azure Active Directory allows you to create users. These users are categorized into two. So users in Entra ID or Azure Active Directory are categorized into two types. So one type of users are called as internal users or users belonging to your organization. So these are all employees of your organization. Okay, that's why we call them as internal users. And there are also some users who doesn't belong to your organization, and we call these users as external users.
Okay.
We also call them as guest users. We also call them as B2B users. B2B stands for business to business users. So whether it is B2B, whether it is guest, whether it is external, all are same. They are synonyms, right? Now, what is the difference between these two? The name says, you might already have a fair understanding by now, that external means they are not your organization employees. They are contractors, outsourced employees. They are not employees of your company. Those type of users are called as guest or external users. The users who belong to your organization, call it as internal users. So the way we create user IDs for external users will be different than that of the internal users. Okay, so we'll see that in a while, but these two are different. So then how do we create these users? Right? So if you go to your Azure Active Directory or Entra ID, so you see this manage section. Under the manage section, you see the users. So here you got the option called as new user creation, and you can create a new user, which basically says create an internal user of your organization, or invite external user, which means collaborate or create a user ID for the people who are not part of your organization. Okay, right. So before I start creating it, let me make few changes. Right. Unable to make this. Oh, I saw it's already primary. Refresh. You see a different domain name here. You'll understand that in upcoming classes, how that can be done and so on. Just trying to change this. Okay, so it will change. Right. So let us go and try to create a couple of user IDs. Okay. So create new user. Right. So new. We are going to create an internal user. So I'll take this as internal user. Now, if you look at this, so the user creation process is like a user creation in any of the systems. No complexity here. Okay. Let us create couple of users. Okay. So let us say we user one, some name I'm picking. So this is the user principal name. So then how does this go? It will go like this, right? V user @ your domain name. What is the domain name here? You see Vemula for you, hotmail dot on Microsoft.
On Microsoft. Yeah.
So why it is Vemula for you Hotmail? Because the email address used to sign up here is Vemula for you at hotmail.
Yeah.
So it picked the email and on Microsoft.com as a suffix. Right. So then, so it is asking you to specify the display name. If you want to change the nickname, you can do it. And then the password part, right? So by default, it generates a password and give it to you. So that's why this option auto-generated password is enabled. Now you want to enter a password, then you can deselect that and enter a password. Okay. So, but I want to go with this auto-generated password. So I'll copy this and I will be sharing this user principal name and password with my user. So whenever user logs in first time, he will be asked to change the password. Okay, that's how it will work. And then do you want to enable this account straight away? So you can, or maybe you can deselect this. Maybe this user joins after 10 days, then maybe you will be disabling this, which means you deselect this option. Okay. Now this is the basics part. Let's say next and go to the next section. So then it is asking you first name, last name, and so on. So maybe I'll say something like this. User type, by default, he is of type member. Internal users are of type member. If this guy is an external user, this option will change to guest. Since we created an internal user, that's why this option is, what do we call it as, member. Okay. Now there are other, what do you call it as, fields here, like job title, company name, employee ID, manager, and so on. And then user group and consent, and then usage location. These are all additional attributes. If you want to go ahead and fill them, you can. So I'll just select the usage location as India, right? And then go to the next section, assignments. So you also know it, or maybe seen, whenever you create a user, you can add user to the groups. Maybe after the creation, some systems will allow him to be part of a group during the creation itself. So similarly, when you create a user ID here on Azure Entra, you can add these users straight away to some groups if you want. Maybe there is a group that which you already have, and you want to add this user to maybe these groups, you can do it straight away from here itself. Or you want to give some administrative privileges. That's what we call them as roles. Those things can also be done from here. Or you can do it at the later point. You can also add him to something called as administrative unit also. So during the creation of the user, you get these options. If you want, you can use, or you can do it later. Review, create your user ID, right? You can create multiple users like this based on your requirement, right?
Okay.
Something like this, right? So go ahead. So then, once you create your users, these users will be visible here under the users section. So you should be seeing those users here, right? So V user 1, that is visible here, and you should also be able to see the another user 2, that which we created in a while. It takes a minute or so. This is your user 1, right, which we just create. So now this user can log into the Azure portal, right, and couple of other portals as well. So now what do we do is, let us try to log into Azure portal using this vUser1. Okay, so I'll get into a private browser mode and I'll try to access portal.azure.com, which is your Azure portal. And this guy is trying to log into this portal using the credentials whatever are shared to him by his administrator. So he enters the password and hits sign in. So whenever this user is logging for the first time, obviously he will be asked to change the password.
Yeah.
He goes and changes the password and he logs in. Right. So now this guy can log into the Azure portal. But remember that this is a normal user. He doesn't have any administrative privileges. He cannot go and create any resources in this portal because he is just a simple normal user without any privileges. Okay. Now if you go and look at this user ID, if you put your cursor here on the right hand top corner, you can see the name, you can see his email or UPN. You can also see tenant ID there. You can also see directory name. You can also see the domain name into which he logged in. So the tenant ID, whatever is displayed there, which is 92EED, so that is the tenant ID of your organization.
User. Yeah. Okay.
Right? He logged in. And the default domain name is the directory name. This is the directory name, sorry. The directory name here is the default directory. If you see that, that is what it is here. And of course, the primary domain, it is showing on Microsoft.com. That is the domain as well.
Okay.
So whenever your user logs in for the first time, he will be asked to, what do we call it as? Change the password. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
so when you go back to this user, right? So the user one who just logged in. So there is this very important feature called as sign-in logs, which basically gives you a fair idea whether user has logged in or not. If the user has logged in, from which location he logged in, whether the login is successful or not, and what type of client he used. That level of information you can gather it from the sign-in logs. For example, so this user one has just logged in, and he logged in at 10:23, 3 minutes back, and he logged into Azure portal, and his login was interrupted. The login is interrupted here for the reason he has to change the password. That's why the status is shown as interrupted. Once he changed his password, right, he could able to log into the portal. So you can further get into this by just clicking on this log. It will give you further detailed information, right? It gives you detailed information like user ID, username, and then a couple of other information related to the user, and then location from where he logged in, what is the IP address of the user, what device he is using, right?
Okay.
And various other information. So this will be useful for you in case if there is any challenge from your user where he says that he got some issue in logging in, you can get into these logs and then check what is happening with the sign-in. These are all sign-in logs.
Okay.
And your user can also log into another portal which is called as myapps.microsoft.com. So myapps.microsoft.com is another portal where your user can see the list of applications to which he got access. Now, the other day I was saying that you can grant access to SaaS applications, software as a service applications, right?
Yeah.
If this
Yeah.
user ID has got access to any of the SaaS applications, those applications will be listed here. It is like
Oh,
a web, it is like a Citrix portal where you get into it and see all the icons to which you got access, right?
yeah. Yes.
So the applications here are SaaS applications, okay, like maybe 365 apps or maybe Salesforce and so on, right? So you can use your Azure AD to grant access to applications as well, SaaS applications. So in case if your user has got access to SaaS applications, they can see it here and they can access the applications from here. Right? So all these logins that whatever you do, they will be displayed here for you. It takes a couple of minutes for those logs to be displayed, but definitely we'll be seeing all the sign-in logs here. And above the sign-in logs of the user ID, you also see something called as audit log. Now, audit log basically gives you information regards to any changes done to this object. Maybe let us say you change the password. You can see a log there.
Yeah.
Or maybe this user ID is added to a group. Or you changed the department. Or you maybe added some settings are changed to this user. Then where do you find them? Audit logs. Okay. So audit logs and sign-in logs are logs which are useful and they are available for each user. Or you can go to the users section. So now you are in the users. Right? For all the users, you can see the sign-in logs here. So these logs are available in each and every user object. The same logs for all the users are available here, right? It's like security logs on your Windows machine, and then audit logs, right? Very useful. Okay. So now we had seen how do we create a normal internal user. But what if I have a requirement to create bulk users? Now if it's a one or two users, you can go to this option, create new user, and you can do it.
Yeah.
But in case if you have a requirement where you need to create some 30 or 40 user IDs at a time, so this is not a feasible solution. So for that, Azure provides you an option called as bulk create. So using which you can create bulk user IDs in a single time.
Okay. Okay.
So the bulk create option will basically give you a template. You should be downloading this template, fill your data of your users in this template, and this is basically a CSV file. Once your data is feeded into this, you need to upload that file here and submit it. Based on the data that which is updated in the CSV file, users will be created for you. So let us quickly see how does it actually works, right? So this is the template that which we just downloaded. You go to this. Now this is how your template looks like. And of course, they will also give you an example and so on, right? So these are the fields that which you need to fill. Name, user, principal name, initial password. Do you want to block the sign in, first name, last name, and various other, what do you call it as, attributes of the user account. But
Yes.
the ones that which are listed with required, right? You see this required, they are mandatory fields here. So which means the first four are mandatory, that needs to be filled. The other things are not. It's up to you if you want to fill.
Yeah.
Right. So we need to remove this example. Otherwise, you see an error message there. But let us try to fill or try to create a couple of users using this. So let us say I want to create a user with the name. Maybe let us say user 3, v user 3. We'll create a couple more. 4 and then maybe 5. Right? And then it is asking your user principal name here. See this? So we need to give the user principal name. So let us change this. We just need to fill this and then the initial password. I'll use the same password. And I don't want to block this. I want to allow sign-ins. I'll remove this example. Okay, so this should be removed. And the other sections are, as I said, they are not mandatory. Right? But at least these four should be fixed. Save this template. And then let us close this. Now what you need to do is just need to go ahead and browse and then feed the template and submit it. So whatever the details that which you have in that template, using that, your users will be created. So you should be seeing a log here in a while.
Yeah.
Right. So bulk operations successful. Right. You can see that notification. And if you go
Yeah.
and look at the users, and you see this user 3, v user 4, user file are created. And of course, you can also go and look at the logs, right? So under the users section, under the manage section, you see this bulk operation results. If you go to this, so here is where you can find, if there are any bulk tasks that which are executed. So you can see there is this user create bulk operation that was initiated. This time it was uploaded. This time it was done, which means 2 minutes. Completed without any errors. 3 tasks or 3 users are created. 0 failures. And that was done by this guy. And if you go and hit these 3 items that whatever are shown here, now it will give you information that, so this is the user ID, this is the user principal name, and this account is enabled. Every account will have an object ID, that's the object ID, and then it is a successful deployment. Okay, so you can get into the details of all the bulk operations from the manage section and bulk results. Okay, so that's how. And if there are any failures, then they will also be listed here. You can go to that and try to find it out what exactly caused the failure. Okay, like this, you can create users manually, or you can go with a bulk operations option where you can use a spreadsheet. Apart from these two, you can also use PowerShell script using which you can create the users. That is also very much possible. Okay, so which we'll see as we move on. Right? So this is a normal user creation. Any questions on this? Please ask.
No, it is very straightforward. If we create this, when we create this users, so is that they also get the free trial eligible for certain period of time?
See, he is part of your organization, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So which
Got
means
it,
he is part of your tenant.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is about the internal users. So we'll see external users part tomorrow. Okay. So how do we create the external users? What's the difference? Tomorrow we'll also be covering the groups. And then how do we create additional tenants if needed? That will be tomorrow's discussion. Tomorrow we'll talk about tenant creation and groups. That will finish the users and groups tomorrow. And then in the next class we'll go with custom domains and then so on. Okay? Right.
Yeah, sure.
So how about the timings, right? So are you comfortable with this timing?
This week I'm okay with that. If I'm 90, I won't. There will be no change, but in case I need, I'll. Yeah.
Problem is, నాకేంటి ఇబ్బంది అంటే నాకు multiple classes ఉంటాయి. So day in day out, my job is to train people. సో నాకు ఒక స్లాట్ మీరు చెప్తే దానికి మనం స్టిక్ అయిపోదాం. మళ్ళీ మధ్యలో చేంజ్ అంటే నాకు ఇబ్బంది అవుతుంది, మీకు ఇబ్బంది అవుతుంది. సో మీరు ఒకవేళ ఈ స్లాట్ మీకు సెట్ అవుతలేదు అంటే మీకు ఏ టైమింగ్స్ ఫ్రీ ఉంటే చెప్తే ఆ టైమింగ్స్ లో నేను ఫ్రీ ఉన్నానంటే అదే టైమింగ్ కి స్టిక్ అవుదాం. లేదు అంటే విల్ బి కంటిన్యూయింగ్ విత్ దిస్ సేమ్ స్లాట్. సో యూ మే హ్యావ్ టు లెట్ మీ నో. ఓకే సార్, మీరు నాకు వేరే టైమింగ్స్ ఏదన్నా అంటే చెప్తే అప్పుడు నేను అవైలబుల్ ఉన్నానా లేదు ఇంకా ఏదైనా టైమింగ్స్ ఉన్నా నేను చెప్తాను.
సరే, యా షూర్. యా. ఓకే.
థ్యాంక్ యూ. బై.
ఓకే, థ్యాంక్ యూ.